Hey, this is John. Welcome back to Modern Old School Developer. In this episode, we're going to keep working on replacing our manual fetch operations with our Redux Toolkit query mutation hooks. So let's get working on that. Back in VS Code, I did make an endpoint for movie actor add between the last episode and now. So we've got symmetry between add and delete now for our actor selector. So that now works for both adding and deleting. So let's go make something like that for the category selector. So let's go copy these two endpoints right here, and let's update them to work with the categories. So I'll start by highlighting all the instances of the word actor and changing that to category. Then we'll highlight the capital actor, and we'll update that. All right, that should be everything if we had this movie category association type. So let's go make that. We'll copy the actor association type and change this to category and change this to category. All right, that should be good for that. We should be able to import this type. All right, that clears up all the errors. Let's go export our hooks. So we'll say use movie category add mutation and use movie category delete mutation. All right, we now have our endpoints, but I'm wondering about these invalidates tags. Do they work the same way as the actors? So the category is not reflected in the file name. So our movie list does not need to change. So we can get rid of the movies invalidate tag. It only needs to invalidate the individual movie, which is what's controlling our categories selections. So we'll invalidate that to make sure we have the correct data for our individual movie, but movie list does not need to be updated here. All right, so what else do we need to do? Well, let's go into category selector and let's import our new hooks. So let's say const movie category delete trigger equals use movie category delete mutation. All right, and we'll have the same one, but let's change this to add. All right, that should be good. So we have our triggers now, and we'll import that as well. So now we can use our triggers. So here's our onUpdate category function. We get our ID, and that should be fine for this. We definitely need our movie ID as well, so let's keep that. We need to decide which trigger we're going to use. So let's say const trigger equals, if we are selected, this means we are adding a category. So we'll use the add trigger. And if it's not, then we are deleting. So we'll use the delete trigger. All right, that should be good for that. We don't need to build the query or run that, so let's comment this stuff out. I think we'll still need the category name, so let's keep that in here. We're not going to need most of this stuff, so let's open our try catch block. So I want to say const data, which is a movie type, which is what we get back from the API on a successful value. That's going to be await trigger, and we need to supply the values. So category ID is going to be ID, and movie ID is movie ID. And don't forget to unwrap that so we have the actual values. All right, if we catch an error, we can handle that in a minute. But for now, let's simply move this formic set status over here. And does that give us everything we need? I think that it does. I don't want to handle it like this anymore, though. I'm realizing I made custom error messages in the front end, and there's not really any need for that because the back end will tell you exactly what the problem is if there's a problem. Let's just get the error message from the back end response. So we've got error right here. We need to cast that to be of the right type. So let's do that. I want to get the status code and the data off of there. So let's say const status data equals error as fetch base query error. All right, so now we have our status and our data. So within those, we're going to have some kind of response. Let's go look at our endpoint to see what those might be. So here is the endpoint for one of them. This is the adding movie category. So this is what we get on the success. Don't care about that right now. We already have that. That's movie type. But we have these errors, 409 and 404 and 422. So they're not quite all the same. The 422 is coming from FastAPI, and it has a different type. So we'll need two types, a validation error and an exception type error. So let's see about making types for those. This is the one we care about most of the time. It just has a detail with a message string inside that. So let's go add those to our API types. So we might have export interface HTTP exception type. It has a detail inside that, and inside that has a message which is a string. All right, that's all we have for that type. The validation is a bit more problematic, but we can make that too. So export interface HTTP validation type, validation error type, and that is more complicated. So first, what do we have here? So it has detail like the other one, but there's all of these properties inside. Let's copy that for a minute so I can have that. So I want to model this. So it's going to be a detail, which is an object, and let's see here. It's actually an array, isn't it? So we have potentially multiple details. And within that, each one of them is an object. So the object is going to have the location property, which is an array of strings. All right, so that should be good for that. And what else do we have in here? We might have a message, which is a string. Didn't mean to put a semicolon there. And we might have a type, which is a string. Okay, so I think that all looks pretty good to mirror this one. We'll go back to our category selector, and I want to switch on our status because we either have the common error type, the ones that I'm returning, or we have the validation error type. So basically, I want to say if status equals 422, then we have a validation type. Otherwise, we have our regular type. So I want my message from this data. So I want to say const message equals, we're going to need to destructure that. So inside data, I need to say data as HTTP exception type. So this has our detail in there. So we need to get detail, and then we'll destructure that to get our message. And that should be good for that. So I think we should be able to just do formic.setStatus message. And that should work for this, I think. Yeah, that looks right. And on the 422 error, I'm not sure we even need to get any of the messages here. Yeah, you know what? Let's just make it more generic for this one. I don't think this will ever actually happen because this should be saying we have an invalid query, which shouldn't ever arise from our front end. That would mean we made the front end wrong, and hopefully we didn't do that. And if we did, we can't handle the error. We should fix the code. So honestly, I think we can just do if status is not equal to 422, then we do this. Which means I didn't need to find that error code, I guess, but it's fine. So we'll just guard against this one error code, make sure we've got the right error type, and all of this can be commented out now. And I think that should work. So let's go take a look and see if it does. Let's go back to our front end. Let's hit refresh. And the Karate Kid is not an animated movie, so let's get rid of that. Removed category. And if we scroll back, yes, it's not on there. It did update that, and it did update the category, so they are correct. And if we failed, I'm not sure what's going to happen, actually. Why don't we see what happens if we fail? we can make a fake failure event by going into our Movie Manager API and breaking our delete endpoint. So let's just say we put the wrong endpoint in there, and we're guaranteed to get a 404 error. So let's go back over here, and let's add animated back, and then let's take it away. Okay, we got the wrong endpoint, but animated is still on there. Okay, well, that is good to know, although it would have been nice if it had fixed the checkboxes automatically for us. That's slightly a problem, so I wonder what we should do about that, if we should handle it at all. I mean, it's pretty minor, it will probably never happen, but I'd like to handle all the potential problems. I'm thinking we could set the categories in here, and that should update things for us. So let's see if that works. If I went to movie list to see how we did that, what do we see here? Here are the movie categories. So I just need to do this real quick. So let's go back to this. And why don't we do that as well? So if we get any kind of error, we will reset our status. So right here, movie categories map the category. Set field value doesn't exist. Let's make that formic.setFieldValue. And movie cannot be found, so we don't have that in here. In categories, we'll get the movie as well. All right. And is that everything we need? We need to get the skip token, and we need to get use movie query. Yep, that should be good. So now we should have our movie, but it might be undefined. So we will set it to a question mark, and I think that should be okay. All right, let's go ahead and save that and see if that works. So let's go refresh. You can see it still has animated on Karate Kid. If I take that off, we get an error, but our categories are still proper. We still have animated on there, which was correct. All right, that should be good to handle that. All right, next I think we'll fix the movie import button. So here is the code we're using right now. Let's go change that to be a hook. So we'll start by making a new endpoint. This one's going to be another mutation endpoint. So we're going to import movies from backend. So this will be movies import. It's going to be a builder.mutation. And the type is going to be a movie file type array. And we don't need any parameters for this. All right, so we need to supply it an object, this function, and the query is going to be no options, and we're going to have movies right in here, but we can't just supply the endpoint, we need to supply an object with the URL and the method. So let's say this is going to be an object, and this should be URL, and I don't think we need anything in here, so we don't need a template string. And what else do we have? We need the method, and method is going to be post. And then we need our invalidates tags, because if we import new movies, we need to update the movies list. So let's say invalidates tags, and that's going to be movies plural. It shouldn't change the current movie in any way. All right, there's our movies import thing. So let's go export our hook. So use movies import mutation. All right. Now let's go back into our movie import button. So here's what we're doing right now. So let's go add the hook here. So I want our trigger. So I'll just call that trigger in here. And it will be use movies import mutation, and that should be good for that. So we no longer need to do this. Instead, we need to run our hook. So we'll put it in a try catch block. So first I want to say const data which is a movie file type array, and that's going to equal await trigger. We have no parameters for this, and we're going to unwrap that to get the data immediately. All right, then we'll catch our error, and we'll see what we do with that in a minute. So if our response is okay, we need to see what has happened. So we've got our count here, and all I need to do is say pretty much this, I'm thinking. So we'll say if data.length is 0, no moves available for import. We use this count a few places. I guess we want to make the count variable as well. So let's do that. So we'll undo that, and that should be good for everything in there. Otherwise, we've got this set import status for the data detail message. So we need to get that message just like we were in the categories. So let's go grab that real quick, and we'll just put this stuff in here. So our status and our data equals the fetch base query error, which we need to import. We need to import our exception type. And then it's not formic.set status, it's set import status. So we'll change that. And I think that should be good. So if I comment this out, all right, so I think all of that looks good. Let's go add some new movies to import. So we'll go to our imports folder. I don't think we have Karate Kid 2. I don't think we have X-Men 2. So let's add those real quick and see if that works. If I go back over here, let's hit refresh, go over to the admin page, and hit import movies. Imported 2 movie files. Looks like it worked. If I go back over here, hey, Karate Kid 2 and X-Men 2. They are definitely both in there. If I go back over here real quick, let's just add one movie, and let's add, I don't know, X-Men 3. Let's hit import, ported one movie file. All right, that looks good. What if I don't have any movies at all? No movies are available for import. Yeah, I'm thinking this pretty much worked. So there we go. Karate Kid 2, X-Men 2, X-Men 3. So we can go add those to our list and do whatever else. All right, so one more thing I want to tackle is this onRemoveMovie function. So we need one more endpoint for this. So let's go into our Movie Manager API, and I want a movie remove. So let's do that, or movie delete. So here's movie. So let's say movie delete. It's another builder mutation. It's not going to return anything interesting, so I don't need the return type at all. And then we'll get a string, which is going to be the ID. So it needs an object again. The query has an ID, and we need to return an object from this function. It needs a URL, which is going to be movies/ID, and we need the method, which is going to be delete. And this time it also has some invalidates tags. So what does it invalidate? It invalidates, I guess, just the list of movies? I think just that. We'll see how that goes, but I think that should be the only thing that we need. So let's say that this one removes a movie from the backend. Okay, so let's see how this goes. Let's go ahead and export that endpoint. So use movie delete mutation. Okay, and now we'll go into movie data form. So right here we have an async function. It is in our component though, so we can add that here. We've got some other queries over here, so let's add that down here. So let's say const trigger equals use movie delete mutation. So I think this will be our only trigger in this component. So that should be good for that. So what do we have here? So if we have a movie ID, We get that. We confirm it's the right thing. We try to delete it. Okay, we don't need to do that anymore. So instead, what are we going to do? Let's do our try catch again. So this time, we don't need the data because we're not getting anything back from this function. It just returns a message, and we don't care about it. All we care about is that it succeeded. So we'll simply say, await, trigger. It takes the ID, which is a movie ID, and then we're going to unwrap that. All right, so that should be good for that. And if we made it here, then we can do these things. Should be able to set our status and reset the form. I'm not even sure we need to reset the form anymore, actually, because I think we're going to need to refetch things, because we'll need to reselect our movie ID. So I think that's going to be wrong. Let me comment that out for now, and we'll come back to that in a minute. So what if we catch an error? What is that going to look like? Well, it's going to be very similar to our other thing. Let's go into our actor selector, and let's go get this information. And I want this basically. So let's import that, and let's import that. Okay, so if we get that, we will set our status. Is that correct? Yeah, I'm thinking that should be correct. So I don't need to do any of these things anymore. And let's see, is there anything else we would need to do? I think there's one more thing on success. Let's come back to that in a minute relating to this reset form component. But let's come back to that in a minute. Let's just see if this works by itself. So if we go over here and I hit refresh, we have Karate Kid 2. If I try to remove it, it says, should I do this? Let's say yes. Successfully removed Karate Kid 2. All right, it's no longer in here, but we do have our form still being in here. We didn't do that reset form. And actually, I don't think we even have the correct selection or movie list anymore. We probably don't have any selection. So let's go back to our state and see our movie ID is 21, but X-Men is 22. So yes, we do not have the right selection anymore. So that's what I think we should be doing. Resetting the movie ID back to the empty string, which should trigger it to fetch our new movie with this new selection, I think. Let's see if I'm right about that. So instead of this, we're going to set something. Do we have our dispatch? We do not. So let's go get that real quick. Where would I have a dispatch? All right, we've been calling it Redux dispatch. Actually, I'm going to rename that back to just dispatch. So let's do that. And let's import useAppDispatch. Yep, there we go. So we now have our dispatch. I should be able to set the movie ID to be undefined, or the empty string. So let's do that. Dispatch set movie ID, and it's supposed to be a string, so I should be able to set it to be empty. And let's see if I'm right about all the things working together if we do that. So I will refresh. I want to remove X-Men 2. Really do that? Yes, I want to do that. Okay, we removed that, but I still see X-Men 2 over here. So clearly I was wrong about what is going to trigger things. So let's see why that didn't work. Well, my thoughts are that this is simply too quick and movie fetching is too slow. So this is going to update, go back to movie list, see it's changed, and reset to the same value it already had with the cached movie data before we get the new movie list. So that's not going to work, at least not like it does. So let's try to use the formic reset form and see if that works. We won't have a selection anymore, so that's going to be not quite what I want, but let's see if at least it looks better, and we can fix that problem in a minute. So let's go over here, and let's go import movies. All right, we've got our Karate Kid back, and our state is going to be movie ID 21. So if I remove this and I hit OK, there we go. It is, state is 21. Okay, well that seems all right. We don't have anything over here. We have a movie ID, which that's not quite right. We've got information that doesn't actually work yet. So that's a problem we need to solve. Well, this isn't quite how I wanted to handle this, and it needs some more fixing. But I think for now, I'm going to remove the default selection. So when you first load the page, it will not load the first movie. It will be a blank thing. And if we do that, then things don't change, and we can actually remove the current movie by simply running that dispatch hook. So if we do that, set movie ID to undefined, it will go back to being blank. So we start out the page, we have nothing selected, so update does nothing, changing things does nothing, but it all looks like it could do something, which I don't like. I want all of these controls to be disabled if we don't have a selection. But at least we're not getting errors anymore. And if I select X-Men, now we can actually do things. So that's better, but we need to make sure that if movie ID is blank or undefined in this case, that we don't have any of these controls look like they could do anything. So let's see if we can do some of that real quick. So in the movie data form, in this field set here, I think we can just put in disable equals movie ID equals blank. So if we don't have a movie ID, all of those fields will be disabled. Let's go see what that looks like. Refresh the page. I have no selection. I can't go in here, can't make selections. The buttons still look like they should be active. We'll have to do something about that, but we'll fix that in a minute. Let's go work on actors and categories and do the same thing in there. So in the actor selector, I think we could either put a field set above this or do the individual selects. Let's just do that real quick. So why don't we do disabled equals movie ID and that. Let's do that there and on the other one. Okay, and then we'll go into the category selector. And what do we have in there? So here is our fields, and we're mapping our categories here. I think we should use a field set for this. So why don't we say field set, and we'll put the other one on the other side of this map right here. And then again, I'll put in disabled equals movie ID equals blank. And let's see if that looks good. So now if I go over here and I hit refresh, well, they're certainly disabled. This looks kind of wrong. I'm not sure why they look like that over here. So I'm thinking it's the div. I'm thinking that the div can't be there. So let's put that outside the div and outside the div there. So we hit refresh, and yeah, now we can't interact with any of our categories or our actors. All right, that is better. We can still make selections there, and then everything goes back to being active. We hit refresh, we're back to being blank. So the last thing to fix then is our update and remove buttons. I don't want any of these styles if they're disabled. So we'll have to go into Tailwind to do that. These buttons have our Tailwind classes right over here, but I think we can go fix that in index.css. So right over here, our movie data button, I think if we had some hover and focus styles when they were disabled, it should be okay. So what do I want to put those at? Let's try disabled background gray 400 and disabled hover background gray 400. And if we do that, if they're disabled, they should appear to be grayed out. Hey, they are. No more stuff like that. So now this looks like you couldn't use the form if you don't have a selection. So I think that's a pretty good solution to this problem. All right, I didn't think that would take so long to fix that thing, so I think we're running over a little bit on time. Meant to be a little faster, but sorry about that. hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Hope it has been useful or informative or entertaining or something. If it has, hey, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, help out the channel, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.